All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. The school building committee meeting, and then the meeting's focus is around the high school project. So just a reminder, we have the Q&A where you can write a question. We also have this email address, buildingforfuture@watertown-ma.gov if you want to email a question. You can also raise your hand. And so for all the public, I'll be unmuting you as we start the presentation. I'm sorry, I'll be allowing you to speak and then putting you on mute. So you just unmute yourself when you've been called upon if you raise your hand for a question. And we'll run through the presentation as we typically do, and then invite question and comment at the end. At the end, I should say, at the end of the design review.
And also the meeting is being broadcast on Watertown Cable Access, and there is Zoom information for those that would like to join. It's on the website. There are telephone numbers there as well. That's the legal part we have to do. I'd like to now call this meeting to order and ask Mr. Ports to please call the roll.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Present.
Lindsay Mosca. Lindsay.
So I'm using a different device. Present.
Dee Dee Galston.
Here.
Heidi Perkins. Lori Cable.
Here.
Steve Magoon.
Here.
Tom Tracy.
Here.
Paul Anastasi.
Here.
Kelly Crowbaum.
Here.
Leo Patterson.
Here.
Mark Sideris.
President John Ports.
Present.
Thank you.
I see that Heidi just logged in, so you
Okay.
can
Okay.
present.
Marker present. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is the meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on the minutes as presented?
I'm make a motion that we adopt the minutes of November 4th, 2020 as written.
Is there a second?
Second, Magoo.
Any discussion? John, can I get a roll call, please?
Lindsay Mosca.
Yes.
Dee Dee Galston.
Yes.
Heidi Perkins.
Yes.
Lori Cable.
Yes.
Steve Magoon.
Yes.
Tom Tracy.
Yes.
Paul Anastasi.
Yes.
Kelly Crowbaum.
Yes.
Leo Patterson.
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to get over to Jim.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Sideris. I did want to update your committee on some of the adjustments that we made to option 3D4 that we had the pleasure of presenting to the committee last November 18th. And I think the best way to go about giving you the update is to revisit these diagrams that we presented 2 weeks ago. And they're continually being updated as the design progresses. And it really becomes a roadmap for the important items and features that we want to continue to focus on, not only through preferred schematic report, but also moving the project into schematic design. So it really, I think by talking to these diagrams briefly, it'll help us understand the floor plans that we want to share with the committee later. So one of the first things we want to identify is the Columbia Street residential response, this upper diagram right here. And some of the adjustments we made from 2 weeks ago is we went ahead and pushed the building away from Columbia Street, closer to Common Street by about 25 feet. What that allowed us to do is to make these program spaces that you see aligning Columbia Street in more close alignment with the current face of the existing high school on Columbia Street. If you recall, we were over that kind of imaginary line, if you will, of where the existing high school sat by about 25 feet. So I think that's a nice response to the residents on Columbia Street. It also allows us to align a component for a new entry and make it more traditional or responsive to the Robbins Road entry, which I'll get to in a minute. By moving the program away from Columbia Street and closer to Common Street, it actually helps reduce the overall length of the bridge that we talked about 2 weeks ago. So you could see the anchor points of these stair towers for egress off the bridge on either side. The distance of the bridge between those two stair towers is about 150 feet at this point in the design, which we'll share with you in a moment. That's a reduction in the overall length across Common Street by about 100 feet since you saw it 2 weeks ago. The other improvements we made, there was some discussion about this long linear bridge that just bisected these two program elements on the Phillips site and Columbia site. By studying closely how the bridge progresses through the academic core and how it progresses through the community realm here on the Columbia Street site, we found a natural pivot point that could be created and expressed with vertical circulation. You could see how the bridge kind of pivots to this location here, and that becomes a better response in our minds to how the building can relate to Robbins Road, and also anchor the geometry that's set up with the gymnasium and student commons on the Columbia Street side of things. So you'll see how that manifests itself in the plans as we move through the design tonight. The expressive program placement that we shared with you 2 weeks ago, we expressed some interest in this diagram here, as well as the massing diagram and site access. One of the things we're continuing looking at is the program that's needed to sufficiently run the academic core on the Phillips site. And also we want to make sure that we have equal program placement on the Columbia Street site. And we talked 2 weeks ago about placing an expressive program on each side of Common Street and starting to create a dialogue between those masses and program spaces. One of the things we thought about since our discussion with Superintendent Galston and her staff 2 weeks ago was creating some kind of true arts cluster that's located on the Columbia Street side. And by shifting the engineering labs into this graphic arts program realm and fine arts program, we could create a really nice, expressive, true arts program located here on the corner of the building as it faces Common Street and responds to the Phillips Street massing. And the bridge would have an opportunity to bisect those programs and create interesting opportunities for overlooks and view into those expressive spaces. So we think this has a lot of potential to develop further in the schematic design process. One of those elements that it helped us achieve is to really take a second look at the study of the footprint on the Phillips Street site. Some of the comments we heard a couple of weeks ago was that there seemed to be a lot of mass located on this end of the campus. So by just simply shifting 2 engineering labs and creating a centralized art cluster on Columbia Street, it actually freed us up to reconfigure some of the classrooms that wrap around the shared collaboration space, and also take a second look at the daylight opening from the roof down to the first floor. And one of the comments was it looked very massive and atrium-like. So we wanted to truly focus on what was needed to allow daylight to come through this area and to further compact this footprint of the building. What that allowed us to do in this central diagram, as you see here, we overlaid the existing footprint of the Phillips site buildings, the COA and the Phillips building here. And you could see, even from the community forum we had a few days ago, we studied an opportunity to pull this building further away from Spring Street and to actually make this grade level entry from Spring Street a 1-story element instead of 3, and then make the building behind that the 3-story element. So what that really means when you look at it in a sectional view below, where we showed this building 2 weeks ago is this light blue area with a 3-story face facing Spring Street, and then it steps back to the 4th floor. Here, you could see that it's a 1-story element pushed back even further from Spring Street, shown in this dark blue line and the dark blue hatch, and then it becomes a 3-story building as it expresses itself above that Spring Street projection. We think that's even becoming more responsive to the context and the abutters on Spring Street and on Marshall, as I'll show you in a little bit. The site access diagram hasn't changed much since we talked about it 2 weeks ago. We're still considering 2 independently run entry points that support not only the Watertown Community or Cable Access TV studio and video production CTE programs, but also the administration, medical, and some supply receiving occurring here off of Spring Street. And we still have a secondary entry off of an access road. Whether it connects with Common Street or not is to be determined, but there will be some kind of peel away zone here for a secondary access. We spent a bit of time looking at programs as they wrap around not only the collaboration space, but also the open daylight well that begins at the roof level, flows through the 3rd level. You see here in the blue zones, the academic classrooms wrapping around collaboration and open atrium space. As we go down to the 2nd level, you could see the bridge connecting those program pieces, and you can see the different colors of programs along Common Street. And those are those expressive programs that we're continually referring to. And you could see how the bridge transitions, and there creates a nice pocket here for vertical circulation, and it offers a pivot point for that community bridge to have a new termination in direct alignment with Robbins Road. As we get to the ground or the 1st floor level, again, you could see a very similar floor plate to the 2nd floor above in this academic core. And again, this yellow highlighted zone represents that daylight flowing through the center of the academic core, and how that manifests itself into the floor plan we'll show you in a moment. And then finally, the lower level, which is the walkout level to Spring Street below the 3-story academic core stack above. And here you'll see the big underground parking lot with the programs placed along the front of it to have a nice response to Common Street and the flex field in front, where the COA will be talking with those folks tomorrow in more detail about their program. So we'll be updating the plan based on that feedback. Here we had this study, it's been modified. You could see that there's only 1 daylight opening through the building. Previously we had 2. By consolidating it to 1 more robust opening that allows the amount of daylight we need and the space we need to make that daylight work through the building, allowed us to further compact the academic core, and again have less of an impact on the footprint on Spring Street and Marshall Street, and in turn turn over more usable outdoor space for outdoor learning opportunities on the Phillips site, which I thought was much needed based on the large bulky floor plan we were presenting 2 weeks ago. We shared this 2 weeks ago as well, and we've updated it with the new building plan. Here you see the 1 open daylight well here. Before there was another one on this side. And there was some comments by a couple of members on the committee about the length of the bridge. Here you could see it's about 150 feet, which is 100 feet less than what it was when it terminated back to this point 2 weeks ago. You could again see the compression of the academic core at this location, and we're still identifying the expressive program elements facing Common Street, so we could tuck the more private academic classrooms behind that zone to give them a little more separation from a very active public road here. This is a diagram that you'll see appearing in the preferred schematic report. It identifies the major circulation spaces within the campus, starting with Columbia Street, peel away zones for parent drop off and pickup, a central access point here aligned with Robbins Road for the main entry for students to the community side of things here. Access to the underground parking garage via Barnard or Broadway with an in and out direction located here to the underground parking. There could be a major or an access point to district facilities, which we're holding at this point here, knowing that the Council on Aging building will be positioned in this point here. To what the footprint is, we'll find that out once we have more programming discussions with the COA and how big their program needs are. But we're holding a place here for them with an access off of a small parking area. And we talked about this a couple days ago in the community forum about having the access and circulation required around here for van pickup and drop off, and even accommodating a larger bus for trips that they typically take. Pedestrian circulation via the second floor bridge connecting the two campuses above Common Street. And then when we look at the Spring Street side, there will be an entries addressed off of Spring Street. And this is just indicating some kind of receiving point for those entries, whether it's hard surface or we actually pull a road into the site for more separation from Spring Street, pausing and stopping. We could consider that in the next phase in schematic design. And finally, an access point off of Marshall Road, whether it could terminates at before Common Street or connects to Common Street, we'll study further down the road, but there will be a secondary access point to the academic core located in this position here. So with that, we could go into the detailed floor plans. Not too much has changed to this plan since you saw it last. We are looking at ways of having a more visible and open connection from the ground level area here with access off of Spring Street to the first floor of the academic core above. You could start to see an oversized stair starting to be contemplated here off of the admin entry and exit point. So, you know, teachers that would use this stair frequently to access admin, medical, and guidance programs would have access to an elevator and an oversized stair to get them up to the academic core. Whether this is an open element that you could see through to the first floor, and to the extent of that, we're currently studying now, but we're holding a place for that to exist in the plan as we show it here. And then these would be egress towers from the floors above to give additional access to those programs above. So a little bit of work to do here and figuring out how that circulation is really going to manifest itself. But the programs as they're landing here, we've reviewed with you and the district in some of their focus groups a number of times, and they remain unchanged at this point. This is the overall, what we call the first level of the building. You could see the one, that opening I was referring to that gives you a visual connection to the administration suite below, that oversized stair, and the elevator access to those points. This represents the upper zone of the black box theater, which is represented by an X showing it's a double height space. The expressive programs manifest themselves in robotics, graphic arts, science labs along the front facing Common Street, and more traditional special education and classroom spaces wrapping around the back side of that to give it more privacy from an active road on Common Street. Here you could see we're starting to populate and reduce the scale of the collaboration, shared collaboration space for this floor, where students will be broken up into two neighborhoods, if you will. So the population here will be subdivided into two groups. And then on the on the community side of things, on the Columbia site, you could see the entry point into a large underground parking, access to district facilities, still keeping the loading receiving area here and main entrance to the facility located off of Broadway here. And this creates an area where we could have culinary arts, direct access to the district kitchen, in close proximity to shipping and receiving, custodian backed up against the loading dock. And this creates an opportunity for outdoor dining on the lowest level with direct access to the flex field. We did shift the art classrooms to this corner, and we talked about developing this as a kind of a modern arts cluster, which would include graphic arts, art, those engineering labs that I referred to earlier, with some large circulation spaces so they can have outdoor access. And this would be the end of the bridge here, which gives you vertical access to the bridge above on either side of Common Street. So students can circulate up and down on either end of the bridge at all levels of the facility at this point. This becomes the stair from above, which allows us to rotate the bridge so it has a better alignment with Robin Street. And you'll see that in the next plan I'll share with you, which is here. So this becomes an opening to below. So there's a visual connection, and it provides an opportunity for that multi-level change to occur and that pivot point in the bridge to be located here. And we're thinking this could be a really attractive component and a unique space to design into the bridge. The bridge itself is from this point to this point, and then it becomes embedded in the building. But we can have a lot of glass located around these programs to give you views into those dynamic spaces as you move beyond and into the lobby space that's shared by the gym and the auditorium. And you can see the response to Robbins Road here and the pullback of the program along this edge to give more room off the curb drop-off edge to the face of the building, which is about 50 feet. It's almost identical to what the high school is set back now. Here you see the support spaces with locker rooms, a cluster of PE alternative programs located here, a satellite kitchen so that there could be an upper floor grab and go kind of environment for students to take advantage of when they come off the bridge and into this space. So that gives them multiple opportunities for dining, as we mentioned 2 weeks ago, not only on the second floor, but on the floor below, where they could have direct access to the flex space below. And once again, you could see if the COA is a 2-story structure, it would have direct access to the student commons, the gymnasium and walking track above, and also these PE alternative spaces, and the auditorium as well would be located on this level. When we look at the academic core on the Phillips site, you'll see this is the first floor of the media center. And we think this could become a real nice anchor to the corner of the building and have a response to the expressive programs in band and choral and practice rooms located here. Same floor plan layout as below, with the only difference you see that the community bridge becomes part of the collaboration zone as it passes through the academic commons, and it's only open on one side instead of 2 sides that we shared with you 2 weeks ago. So that helps us make this program piece a little more compact and offer more outdoor learning opportunities for the district. And we're still going to be collaborating quite a bit in the future with the district about how we subdivide these dark yellow zones for collaboration that's shared between the students on this second floor level and what the needs are there. And finally, when we go up to the 3rd floor, you can see a very similar floor plan to the 2nd floor below. On this side, we have journalism, business, and fabrication lab that are kind of clustered around the library media center. We think there could be some nice adjacencies that occur with those programs in the media center. And here you can see the science labs once again stacked on the front edge facing Common Street. And then the circulation zone here on the Columbia Street side with access to the walking track and possible fitness weight room located in this location. And then there could be a hallway that allows you access via stair down 1 level and an elevator to once again gain access to the Council on Aging. So they have a way of coming from the 2nd floor, circulating up to the walking track to make use of that program space. And then finally, this would be the 2nd floor of district administration offices, which is to be laid out in the future. But holding that program space for the size we believe is necessary for them is what we're going to carry forward into schematic design. This is an update of those massing moves that we've made since 2 weeks ago. Here you could see the step back from Columbia Street before the early childhood education program was roughly at this line, and the building stepped forward right about here and continued across. You could see a big move to push that building back. It helped reduce the length of the bridge, and I think it's a much nicer response. And you could see this spine being developed here, which anchors the gymnasium and those other program support spaces, and also anchors the student common spaces on the lower 2 floors. And this could help create that pocket point and transition point located here for vertical circulation as you enter off the bridge. This is that one-story projection at ground level that faces Spring Street, and then the three-story academic building, which is located here. This edge of it would sit on top of that lower one-story component, and it's a much further step back than what we showed 2 weeks ago. In fact, it's about 10 feet further back to this edge, but it's also further back where the majority of the mass of the building is located by about 40 feet, as we showed you in that previous slide with the building section. This is a view looking down Common Street, looking west from Mount Auburn direction. And you could see, you know, we still have work to do here on the front edge, but the building we want to make sure responds to each other across Common Street. You can see a more compact building footprint on the Phillips site, and then starting to see how the massing is going to work and how this program that wraps around here is starting to encompass that flex space, and the COA creates a nice building edge to really contain that flex field out in front. So developing this is going to be top priority, along with a lot of other things, quite frankly, as we move the project into schematic design. Here's some perspective views. This view looking down Common Street. Once again, this view looking across Common Street, looking in a southeasterly direction towards Auburn Street. You can see Spring Street located here, the one-story program, and then the academic core above that point. This is looking down Columbia Street. Robbins Road is right about here. You can see how it's starting to respond to that entry point that I discussed earlier. This would be where district administration offices, 2 floors would be located, as well as the early childhood education program on the first floor here, with an opportunity for secured outdoor play area for them as well. And you can see the bridge crossing Common Street. This would be the Library Media Center on the 3rd and 2nd floor located here, with the upper level of the Black Box Theater and other programs located in front of that. This is a view down Robbins Road, looking across Columbia Street. This we talked about 2 weeks ago, an elevated walking track, creating a nice covered canopy for students to wait under, and how it connects and engages the entry spine is something that we're excited to continue to develop as we move forward. You can see the gymnasium pop-up roof located here. This is looking down Marshall Street with Spring Street to the left. And you can see the massing of the building, and the step back is starting to become more responsive to the neighborhood. I think it's moved in a very nice direction in a short period of time that we've had to really push that forward. So we're pretty happy with how it's developing now. So with that, if there's any questions or comments, we'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Christy, let's start with the panelists, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So Lori had her hand up first.
First of all, wow, this is really exciting. It's all coming together. My question is, does moving the building away from Columbus Street and really where the CTE is now, is that going to affect the phasing? Because if I recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to leave the gym for the last phase. Does this now affect that at all?
We know that's a critical component to the project. So we are in the process of updating phasing drawings. And actually, it's an excellent point you bring up, Lori. This area here, we got to be very sensitive about how it impacts the gymnasium. And when you look at the existing plans, the gym is not that big of an area. There's a lot of jagged edges, if you will, like notches along it that aren't necessarily part of the gym. So we're trying to find that boundary that would be a realistic cutaway point, if you will, from the existing gym So we know we have to be responsive to that, and we'll make sure the plan does in fact not impact that as we move forward. But we are getting close to it. We're continuing to get closer and closer to that line of demarcation.
Great, okay. So next was Heidi.
Thank you, Christy. I just have a question. I'm sure it's something that's going to be added later at some point, but we, have people that might use the gym or might use the auditorium or might use the dining area, whether they're renters or there's our own events happening. And we typically would gate off the other areas. It's always a problem in any district I've been where people, walk down the hallways. There might be damages in the bathrooms. They go into classrooms. So for a lot of reasons, we would need to really have gates. So say to the left of the gym, I would envision that there would be some kind of a metal gate wall that would pull across there. We also, in our existing school and likely would continue to, we alarm areas where people shouldn't be, and the custodians unalarm the area that is booked for use. But I've just seen a lot of damage. We've had damage in our own school too here, but I've seen a lot of damage that has occurred in the other districts I've been for the inability to lock off hallways and other areas. So can you talk about where that auditorium gym is, what you would envision being there to lock that area off?
Yeah, it's a very important topic, Heidi, and we know we got to work through that process with you more closely as we move the project forward. But right now we're considering a partition point here, but it sounds like you'd like to see these two possibly being subdivided as well, so that they're not both completely open to each other during an event in the gym where the auditorium's not in use. So we'll have to study that a little bit further to see if there's a way that can be accomplished. But right now we were anticipating a connection or a partition located here, and obviously one behind the media center located in this point here. So this whole area could be independently run, if you will. So if the goal is to separate the auditorium and gym, we'll have to take a closer look at that. I don't have a solution for that at this point. So we'll need to make a priority for you or not.
Yeah, and I don't know what the committee will decide, but I personally feel that that's important. I've seen, unattended children of people that might patronize one area or another for whatever reason, in science rooms, and all sorts of things happen in anywhere I've ever been. So, we obviously, there's a lot of money going into here and a lot of brand new stuff, and whether it's, people not being watched or whether it's visiting teams or whatever it is. And, things can happen. So I appreciate if we delve into that at some point a little bit more. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Next is John Ports.
Sure. A couple quick comments and a few questions. One, I was one of the advocates for a shorter bridge, and I do like what you've done there. I mean, I like, shortening that, I think makes a lot of sense. And the fact that you've put, more of an arts component on the Columbia Street side, I think that makes it work better. And I mean, I suppose a downside, we lose a little bit of that flex field in the ground at that level, but still, I think it's a much better, I like that design that you have. And I also like where you've kind of, the bridge doesn't necessarily try to line up exactly with the entrance on Columbia, because I think you've created kind of an angle there, which I think is good. I mean, to me, it flows with the building better that way. So I appreciate that. A couple of questions. If I'm standing on Columbia Street now, looking at the existing building, you're saying that this building is pretty close to the same, the face that's Columbia is about where it is now, roughly?
Correct.
And so if I envision that, because if you stand on the sidewalk right now, then it dips down really fast. And then like where the Watertown cable access entrance is,
right.
I assume that if we looked at it right now, what you're saying is that's going to kind of all get filled in And that the parking would be then at the level that the cable access is now? Is that becomes that underground parking?
Correct. What we're showing here is that edge of the underground parking, and this is the distance we need off the road to get the correct slopes away from the road edge so that we can cut into this zone. And that's about as close as we could get that underground parking to Columbia Street. And then we step back a little bit further, and this line right here, I believe, is right about 50 feet from the curb edge to this point, which is roughly where the building face is now on Columbia Street. So, I
So
don't know
that
if makes-
existing kind of valley that's there now, that will be gone.
it would be modified, yes,
Yeah, because you're going straight into the building at that point.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're going to step up about 3 feet from the existing kind of sidewalk zone here to get into this level.
Okay,
But you're going to be going down about 12 to 15 or 14 feet to get down to the parking garage level.
yeah, okay, great. And then I had two other questions. On the academic side, one question is you didn't really talk about teacher space. I mean, and what's the thoughts on kind of teacher space? Is there any particular ideas in terms of areas for collaboration for teachers?
Yes.
And then the other question is I don't know if you're still using the word kind of atrium for that open air space in the academic side.
Yep.
What's the approximate width of that?
The atrium, let's see here. I thought I wrote that down. It's approximately, I'd say 30 feet by 120 feet. So it's 30 feet wide, and you could see if the classrooms are about 30 feet long, they're about 30 by 30 squares. It's about 120 feet long by 30.
Okay.
And we do have 2 teacher planning areas in the academic core. We place them at the end of the open daylight well with outside access, not access, but views.
Oh,
There's
there it
one
is.
located on the main level here. We call it teacher prep. And then there's one space located below on the main level here. So they're centrally located in the academic core. So they do provide a nice ability to have eyes on the open collaboration space, if you will. And they're easily accessible and equidistant to the clusters of classrooms that are embedded in the academic core.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think as you go down the road here and get further along, I think, the high school teachers, administration have more conversations about kind of how teachers organize themselves and kind of what the way of doing that. I know early on, we had a lot of discussion about that, of different ways that might happen. And I'm sure that will become a point of interest on the part of the future occupants of the building.
Yeah, that we would probably expect to see some kind of planning area located in this kind of heavily clustered CTE zone here, so teachers aren't constantly going back and forth through the academic core. So it would make sense to see something here, and we have the opportunity to discuss that with Superintendent Galdston and her staff tomorrow. We have our weekly meetings with them, so we'll bring that up at that point, see what their feedback is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Next is Superintendent Galdston.
Excellent. Thank you. Actually, John mentioned a few things that I was going to bring up. But I would just like to mention those Friday meetings that we're having are really quite important, not only to provide feedback and input about the building, but for us to start to think about what the future is going to look like in this amazing, future high school. And I want to acknowledge, and I think it's kind of important when we look at these drawings that, this doesn't necessarily look like a high school from 30, 40, 50, even 20 years ago. And I put out on the table, I mean, I've been in education for 29 years. And, part of me tends to go back to, those more traditional types of configurations. But as I said at the last meeting, I'm going to suspend all that and really focus on the future, because, what we're building is a high school for, the next 50 to 70 years. And it is for our children's future, not our past. So when I look at the building, I think, and I'll stop talking in a few seconds, but one of the things that superintendents have done is gone around to some of our major, industries and businesses and looked at how they're setting up, their enterprises to foster creativity and flexibility and really moving forward. And I see that in this building in the sense of, really encouraging, collaboration and facilitation in ways that are not necessarily like we did in the past. And I'm just very impressed and proud at the work that's being done here. I'm excited about the Columbia Street side, but really I'm focused on a little bit more on the Phillips building side because what I'm seeing there is the future, and just very proud and excited to keep moving forward. The one thing I was going to ask about was the field. I do, agree with John that I like the way that you've clustered the arts, et cetera, on this side. I think it brings more of a sense of continuity and, threading, various modalities of art. But it does seem that there was a little bit of a sacrifice in the field. Can you just talk a little bit about, are we still envisioning that there's going to be enough space there for, say, PE to go out and do, outdoor activities, or what is that vision now of that field?
Absolutely. We're thinking it's probably not going to be like a regulation soccer field by any means, but it will be a multi-use a field that can be used for not only leisure activities during student commons time, but also there could be some kind of regulated sports activities occurring on there. I think it is a good sized field still. We only took away, I would say, maybe 40 feet on this edge because this bridge was still located roughly in this location. If you recall, it was pretty much open to this area here. But there is a possibility of continuing to push some program closer to district administration here and maybe free up a little more room in this zone. But at the next meeting, we could share with you the dimensions of this and show you what the opportunities are for having some kind of small regulation field. Maybe it's an undersized soccer area or something like that.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Okay, next is Lindsay Mosca.
Hi. I do like a lot of the updates, like a lot of the other committee members have said. I think the shorter bridge is a nice look. I really do like just the arrangement and the layout. I like the single atrium space rather than the two for sure. I think it's a lot more possibilities for different types of collaboration spaces in there. I like the setup and kind of the general flow of the building. To Heidi's point about closing things off, I mean, I actually really like that open lobby kind of area, and I just kind of wonder, is it possible to make sure that the auditorium has doors that are locked and we can close the hallways versus trying to separate that space? I just think there's going to be a lot lost if we try to compartmentalize that lobby space, and I kind of wonder just about making sure other areas can be closed without necessarily separating that lobby space. Just a thought that I had. One of the questions, kind of goes to Jim's point and other questions about the phasing. In the community forum on Monday, we started talking about a 4.5 to 5 year build plan, which I was kind of under the impression that a little while ago, some of the options we took off the table because it was going to be a 5-year construction plan, and that didn't seem fair to kids. And so I'm just kind of wondering how we got back to such a long phasing and when we're going to sort of get more updates about that. I have concerns about that length of construction and what that could feel like for kids. I mean, I'm just curious more about, like, what does it mean to have the Phillips Street side done and not the other, and then what happens to kids' experience and everything in that environment. And I know we're early on, but I think agreeing that this is a good plan, to me, that's important for the kids who live through that for 5 years.
We'll continue to study that, Lindsay, and really drill into the phasing plans and schematic design, and we'll see if there's any opportunities to kind of shorten that window. I think the level of abatement, as you all know, is pretty extensive, and that's going to take a period of time. So that adds to the unusual duration of the construction process, because there is a lot of work associated with that. But I think first and foremost, getting the academic building up and running first, so the kids have a new place to learn. And the beauty of it is they're completely separated from the activities on Columbia Street for a number of years. It's not like that construction is going to be on top of them there is a good separation there. But you're right, 4.5 years, 5 years is a long period of time, and we'll have to drill into that a little bit more in schematic design.
And I think I would just add, Jim, I think by comparison, right now, we're suggesting that 3D-4 could be that 4.5 year mark. And as a reminder, that some of the schemes that were discarded for the extended duration of construction were primarily a renovation in addition to the existing building. And even the fastest pace version of that, I think, was 6 years. So that's really the delta between some of the other schemes and the 3D schemes.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I like the way we're laying out each side of the street. I think that's well done and well thought out. I'd like to talk a bit about that security that Lindsay and Heidi brought up. It is a common lobby, correct, Jim?
Correct.
Jim,
it's a shared lobby.
I think it's fairly easy to shut off the bridge and shut off everything on the other side of Common Street. I don't like the idea of a gate across the lobby, but do it with the hardware like Lindsay suggested. I think we need to really focus on that hardware. There's so many different doors, hinges, hardware, crash bars, locking systems, that when it comes to that lobby in particular, we need to be able to segregate auditorium from gymnasium. And I think we can do it with hardware. The common lobby in those two areas in the high school is the big thing now, to use that big use of that space. So I think when it does come down time to specify hardware, we need to put a lot of thought into just that lobby.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Joel.
Good evening. So I echo Dr. Galston's excitement about this building, and even today during our staff meeting after school, I know we're years out, but staff started asking questions just about, the minutia details that, are going to be left to our team way in advance. But it was, to me, an exciting moment to just hear teachers start to get excited. And even on the first day of going back hybrid, this was the priority for them. Like, what's my planning space going to look like? What's my classroom going to look like? And so as we look through, two big things that excite us are kind of that open space that's marked in yellow on the diagram, and then having what looks like a real commitment to the arts on the Columbia Street side. One question we did have was, when we decommission the kitchen on the current kitchen, as we build and complete the academic side, will there be, in the absence of a kitchen on the academic side, do we have any thought on what our school or others have done to eat, or am I missing something? Chipotle for 18 months.
You're going to give out gift cards?
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy.
That might be cheaper than some of the other options.
Am I missing something? There is no dining on the academic side, and
that is correct. No dining on the academic commons side. So it is something that we'll have to kind of drill down with you folks in the near future. Yep.
I mean, we've certainly seen that done, Joel. It just, there are a lot of different strategies, and we'd want to have a conversation about your food service with your food service staff. We'd want to have a conversation with the administration, certainly yourself, about what best strategies work. But we've seen everything from using the newly created common areas to dining in the classrooms to developing a handful of temporary dining spaces and some of the larger created spaces, whether that be the black box or some other newly created space. We just have to talk through what the best fit would be for Watertown for that 12 to 18 month period.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly?
Hi, guys. Just a couple of questions. I know we've been talking a lot about access into the buildings, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly the entry off of Spring Street. I've seen the drop off on the site plan, but I'm also just wondering about physical access into the building. Can you show us on plan where that's occurring?
Here. Physical access into the building off Spring Street. We're talking about a possible peel away zone off of Spring Street here. And it was brought up at the community forum by one of the members of maybe having a peel away road, if you will, so they'd be further removed from Spring Street. There's an opportunity to create an entry plaza here. We have talked about direct entries into this zone here, which would service the Watertown Cable Access TV, Black Box Theater, and also the Career Technical Education video production component, so that all three of these could work together. In addition to that, there's an opportunity for a second entry off of Spring Street located here, which would be an entry dedicated to administration, guidance, medical, and SPED suite. And as I mentioned in the floor plan overview, teachers are going to be filtering down into this level to get their mail, to visit the office, and to do a number of things that they have to have a connection with the administration and guidance folks. So we're trying to develop a connection, a visual connection to the floor above with a floor opening and an oversized stair here, so teachers have the ability to filter down here and then access these programs along this face. But there would be just a straight walkout to grade here, and then access off of Spring Street. And students could filter into the school from this zone as well into the classrooms above.
So just in looking at this, like that looks really tight and pinched considering the number of students that are going to be flowing into the building. And although it's been a really long time since I was in high school, I know that, one of the popular components was for kids to congregate kind of during open hours, especially around the entry of the building. So I don't know if we're trying to dissuade that, but I just feel like the circulation this just doesn't scream entry to me, especially if it's our main entry. It needs to be a grand entry. And so I would ask that we further study this and try to somehow open it up, because right now, the way that we're funneling the circulation, I just think that it's going to be problematic once you put a couple hundred students in there.
It's a good point, Kelly. And one of the ideas we didn't have fully developed for tonight was kind of abandoning these two side ones and creating something more centrally located. And that would offer us a number of opportunities we were looking at the last day or two, which would be that this whole space could be activated for that congregation.
I mean, that's exactly. And that's one thing that's really successful about the existing building is you have this really beautiful entry with a coffered ceiling. And it's just a really nice way to enter into the building. And so we don't want to go to all these efforts when your first impression is sort of disappointing.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Okay. And then just one more thing. I really like this plan and I like where we're heading, and I know we still have a long road ahead of us. I appreciate the reduction of the length of the bridge. I think, eventually we'll need to really start diving into the adjacencies of these programs to make sure that it's not looking or feeling as choppy as it's showing. And again, I know this is programmatic and diagrammatic, but I do feel like we have a lot of stepping going on in plan. And I just hope that eventually we'll be able to soften those components up. One thing I really appreciate is in the bridge components where you're lifting the facade. So the two facades across Common Street are greeting each other. I think that's super interesting, and I hope we continue to study that. I really like how the buildings really are speaking the same language and like kind of paying homage to each other. But again, just some choppiness still going on, which I'm sure we will iron out. And then I know eventually we're going to figure out what's going to happen with the Council of Aging and the facilities. And so right now, we're just tacking them onto the building, but I do want to forward think about how those components would be integrated into the building so that once we get approval, we're not sitting there going, oh crap, where are we going to put these? So that we can, start thinking ahead of it, because right now they still are appearing like very much tacked on.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you for the comments. Those are all valid points. And I think, like you mentioned, there's a tremendous opportunity to have a dialogue between these two buildings across commons. And we're very excited to jump into schematic design and really explore that much further.
Great, thank you, Leo.
Hi, thank you, James. Very interesting developments on this design. I'm starting to like it. And so I'll try and roll through a few points very quickly. To echo and complement what Kelly just said, I too like the fact that the masses across Common Street are starting to regard one another. I think that's a strong point. But I think it's fortified by the idea of this glassy object, this light bridge, kind of bisecting the two volumes and linking them through light, right? And I think that as we go through the course of the next year of schematic design, you know, that's something that I think is one of your strongest points. I do have a question about the multi-story light well that is coming down through the floors. I went to high school in a building that was designed in the 70s. And so it wasn't kind of a historically compartmentalized building. It was actually a very kind of wide open, tall space, large, open, flexible spaces with movable partitions, but it was very live. And I noticed that you're reducing some of the common spaces off of this immediate core, which I kind of think is a very good thing. But can you speak briefly to kind of sound transmittance through a multi-story open space? And, you know, as we're obviously trying to get light down, but what else do we need to do to be aware of?
You hit on a very active subject that we discuss with district administration almost on a weekly basis. We have discussions with them about it. We shared these photos with them. From one extreme, like you're saying, Leo, it could be completely open with collaboration on either side of a large daylight opening. And there were discussions about, is that going to really be an effective use for collaboration space to be that open to a very noise generating space potentially? So we looked at, this is one inspirational photo where there could become segmented walls or movable glass partitions that give the teachers that either slide or pivot. So there could be this complete sense of openness when they want it to be that way, or they have the ability to enclose it for more large group or even small group instruction off of a flexible area on the side of a daylight opening like this image is representing. We did talk about possibly one of those vertical live walls that are planted, but they're with plants that don't shed leaves or things like that. We're not talking about trees or anything like that. And we have been using those in middle school environments, quite frankly, and they do a really nice job of reducing noise in active spaces. So that was one idea that really wasn't pushed much further. But then we started showing different opportunities for varying degrees of separation. And the one below here is that sliding glass wall that I talked about. So we promised the district we'd continue to visit the design of this space and show them multiple opportunities for subdividing and opening it so that it's not just a complete open space like this top drawing represents here. Because acoustics is an important issue, especially when there's classrooms surrounding that space, and there's got to be a delicate balance that we have there.
Great. If we could look at level 2 plan, that would be helpful. I think it kind of reinforces this connectedness between the two volumes, and I appreciate the fact that you're infusing so much artistic program and cultural program on that side, the Columbia Street side of the building. What I also appreciate is the fact that you're taking advantage of the multi-height opportunities there at the crux, at the actual stairwell down to the dining space. I love the spill out of dining direct into that flex field space. And I will say that I think this is, as the massing is evolving, and we know, as Kelly pointed out, things will be massaged, things will become less blocky, less micro stepping, and become more sculptural, and I appreciate that. But one of the things that I think is really coming together in this moment is the the flex field space, which seemed to kind of lumber across the back of this mass, is now becoming more of a living room, right? It's more of a heart or a living room for the actual building function. Sure, it's an outdoor space and it won't be accessible all season, but it's starting to focus around something. And I think that was something that was kind of lingering until I'm realizing that it's coming together here. One question that I have though is, I know we're investing a lot in buried parking, right? You know, each space is quite a lot of dollars per square foot. And I see, you know, this zone here that is to the right of the COA, and that's surface parking to this point. Is that, or like, is there a truck loading strategy, or what is that space at the moment? Is it just surface parking?
Right now, we're just indicating surface parking, but there was discussions about a covered canopy possibly that can be connected to a drop-off zone. So there is some protection for those folks in inclement weather. We know there's a lot of work to do here as far as how to circulate around this and the exact location of the COA. We haven't really pushed this forward since we presented it last. Unfortunately, the soonest we could get a meeting with COA was tomorrow. So when we start to download with them their needs and their size of the program, we're going to spend a significant amount of time re-identifying what the needs are in this zone. And Heidi brought up a number of good points on Monday's community forum. So, you know, just even how a bus approaches this area, a large bus, how does it get onto the campus and then load and then leave? And is that going to even be possible with the tight constraints that we have here? So it is an area that needs to be investigated much more in schematic design for sure.
Right. And I think we have plenty of time to do that. I think that things are starting to fall into a logical kind of arrangement. I would say that COA location, you know, please consider the fact that location should be fungible, right? I think that, you know, the concern about this central green space now becoming compressed, I happen to like that it's being in the, you know, enveloped basically, but I think there should be a little bit of flexibility to maybe achieve a little bit more off to the right. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, good points. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Vinny?
Yes, thank you. So a lot of great comments from my fellow committee members. And I agree with every single one, so I'm not going to repeat them. But I am very excited about how the building is sort of becoming a little bit more compact to better relate to the neighborhood. And I'm very excited about what you're doing internally from a programmatic standpoint to really start thinking about how this is going to function for both students and teachers. Very exciting. And it is interesting, the changes that are happening in sort of the commercial world about how buildings, you know, we're sort of breaking the paradigm of what it means to work in a building. And I think we're successfully doing that here and thinking about it's not just sort of a 19th century style school building. It's really a 21st style school building from the inside. I just want to build on just one last thing that Leo said here. You know, we talked a little bit about, you know, should the facilities maintenance be here or should it not? And I just looking at this picture, and if you could go back to like sort of the level 1, level 2 floor plan. Oops, where's the level 1? Go back level 1.
Level 1. Okay.
So one more. Level 2. This one. You know, and again, just looking at this one, you know, it almost seems to me that I know the Council on Aging is just a placeholder for right now, but if we were to eliminate the facilities and some of these athletic spaces could maybe be moved over to sort of where that little square box along Columbia for the facilities is, and maybe the Council on Aging could be pulled up more so it's sort of adjacent to that cafeteria space. which would then open up sort of that field a little bit more and gain more green space. I don't know. I just want to still leave that out there for this committee to consider, that maybe facilities does not belong here on this site. So, but all the other comments are great. You're doing a great job. Been hearing a lot of positive feedback from the public about the changes that have been made. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Heidi.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, I just wanted to get back to what Paul was saying and reiterate that as well. That's really what I meant, was hardware to just block off the hallways at where the jogs of the auditorium would. It wouldn't be permanent. Nobody would see it during the day. It's really for when we have after hours and weekends. There just needs to be a way to really separate all those hallways and doors and rooms from access. That's really critical. But my other comment that I wanted to make, or question, was, if the COA is located where it is, how would foot traffic get to that building? So if somebody were walking, is there going to be a little path up the edge of that area, or along the cemetery? Like, maybe from Common Street along the cemetery edge, or like, how would people get to that walking wise?
That's a good question. I think it would be a big ask to have them come around this direction here to avoid cutting through the cemetery. It would make sense there need to be some kind of entry point or walking path from here, from Columbia around and into this zone. So it looks like it would be a little bit tricky, but we'd have to study that further, Heidi, to see what the best solution to that question would be.
So, and this might be totally off the wall, but as Vinny said, if facilities was not located where it is, I'm just wondering if the COA should be in that corner instead, so they would be closer to either being dropped off at the peelaways, if somebody were dropping off a parent or a loved one or whatever, and they were getting out, also closer to the roadway, a shorter walk for people that might have difficulty. And then that might, whether it's the field space or a turnaround for the bus or whatever the case may be, I just didn't know if that would be something that would be considered. Just to bring it up.
We studied that a little while ago, and with the entry and exit and the activity going into this underground parking garage, this is going to be the main thoroughfare. It would kind of create an unpleasant area for the COA to have that face here. This is a big steep grade change here, so there would be one level that would only have access to that parking lot, if you will. Then the upper level could have nice access to Columbia Street, but they would be landlocked. One of the nice things about their location here is that they can take advantage of that flex field. Where up in this zone, they'd have to, circulate through and around to get to that point. But I think it's a trade-off. We just have to study it a little bit more to see what the best fit is for them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions here from the committee at this point. Let's now go to the Q&A, Christy, please.
Okay, very good. So the first, Harvey Steiner, at the intersection of the Access Road and Marshall Street, there is no buffer to the 19 Marshall House.
Are you referring to this here?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. At the intersection of there is no buffer.
I don't know if it's this home right here that he's referring to.
Right, that's probably right.
Yeah, this
Pretty tight there.
It does look very tight there at this point.
As you said earlier, that whole area really needs to be studied following more traffic review.
Right.
But noted, we'll put that in the notes.
Yep.
Okay, next, Bob and Missy Shea. Is there any possibility that after your discussion tomorrow with Ms. Gagnon about her thoughts about future programming, that you might increase the square footage of the COA annex? Are we locked into that square footage after this current plan is submitted to the MSBA?
No, I think the COA is an independent project of the MSBA. MSBA doesn't have any say in that other than how much connection they want to see the COA have with the high school. We have heard them in the past say they want it to be its own separate building with a very minimal connection. Back when we did the Plymouth COA and the new high school together, we had to bid those projects completely separate of each other, and they refused to even allow a bridge connection to those two buildings. So that's one of the reasons why we're hesitant to embed it fully into the high school plan at this point. It really needs to be estimated separately. The cost has to be clearly identified and separated from the high school. We have to satisfy their needs too, because they're writing the grant for you folks. So it's a delicate balance. It's a fine line we're trying to walk between meeting the needs of the COA, how embedded it can be into the high school, and also following the recommendations of the MSBA as well. So as far as the size of the COA, I think that's one of the major discussions we're going to have tomorrow. Really check out their facility and understand their program as it is now and what their needs are for the future and how they see their program operating in the future. And then from that discussion, we should be able to drill down on the size of their program and see if it's more or less than what they currently have. And then we'll be able to report back to the committee once we have that information and have a chance to respond to it.
Right. And I know we've said it before in this forum, but just to reiterate, the COA will need to be a separate project, not just bid, as Jim said, but also the OPM and the designer also have to go through separate selection. So it will be entirely separated. This is just initial planning, as Jim said. Okay, next, Lisa Feltner. How many residents are on the Building for the Future email list? How many of these are abutters to the high school? Please note that the frequently asked questions on this dedicated website remains blank. Please announce how people can sign up to receive email notices or subscribe. This information is not found anywhere on the Building for the Future website, including the high school project tab. Thank you. So I counted up, there are 22 community members on the email chain that I'm using right now. Quite honestly, the way that's evolved has been each time an email has come in and people are copied, I've added them to the list. That's why every time I send it out, I say, if you don't want to be on this email list, please advise us. And as far as abutters right now, I believe, I don't know all the abutters yet. I'm hopeful post-COVID to know many more of them. But right now I know only Susan Jones because I've met her and she is on that email list. Related to the website. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna take the screen from you for a minute, Jim. We'll come back to this.
No
But I'm gonna
problem.
pull up the Building for the Future site and just talk everyone through it for a minute. Just make sure I remember all the questions. Okay, so share my screen. Okay, so if I Google Watertown Building for the Future, this is the landing page. Everyone, can you see this? Are you seeing the website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to confirm. So this is where you land. Reminder that we have a link that takes you directly to the location where the agendas and presentations are posted. We have a link where the recordings of these meetings are, and then of course a link to the elementary school and also to the high school projects websites separately. So I'm going to click on the high school project site. And regarding the list, so to be on the list that I'm using right now, the best way would be to contact us, this tab here. And there's an email address, highschoolproject@watertown.k12.ma.us. So if someone would like to be on this email list to be notified of meetings, I'll gladly add you to that list. Regarding the frequently asked questions, the way we usually populate this is when questions are emailed to us, hopefully through this contact us. So we're not at this time logging all these questions from these forums. They're being vetted through these meetings. But we will start to, as we move into schematic design, start to be populating this with more questions. And as I said, hopefully more will start to come in through contact us here. Just a reminder, so here's the homepage. You can see the latest design information. This is based on the last program that was sent to the MSBA, our last submission, the PDP, and the full project, the PSR that we're putting together right now will, preferred schematic report will also be posted here. The schedules are updated. So I'm hopeful that people will visit more often. And as I said, the best way is just starting with the Watertown Building for the Future site. Okay. So let me just make sure that I answered everybody's question, or all the questions from Lisa. So please announce where you can sign up. And
Yeah, okay, let's move on. You got them all.
thank you.
Let's continue. There's some more questions here.
Okay, Harvey. Harvey Steiner, Monday I asked to see a street view looking at the building where it is on Marshall Street. I would like to see a street view showing the impact on the abutting residents on Marshall Street.
Yes, I do remember that question, Harvey, and we have not developed that yet, but it is something, like I said before, we could easily do, and we will develop that view and pass it along to Christy so she can share it, or let Mark review that first before it's shared with anybody else. So we could develop that and send that along quickly.
As soon as we have it, we'll share it.
Okay.
Thank you.
David Leon, 2 questions. 1, can you address design option efforts to incorporate universal design principles to improve accessibility, not just meet bare minimum ADA code requirements? And 2, how will design mitigate accessibility challenges of having a spread out 2-building campus for students, faculty, staff, and residents? For example, the main school entrance on Columbia Street, access for school/community use of gym/auditorium, location of elevators in each building, and adequate accessible parking at key locations around the campus. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a lot of work and a lot of time we need to invest in identifying all those. Universal access is a very important subject, and not only what we do as designers, but also the MSBA is very aware of that. And we know there's a lot of work to do and a lot of level changes on this building, quite frankly. So you will see a number of elevators being input into the plan. You are correct. There is a level change that we have to address at the entry off of Columbia Street that aligns with Robbins Road. You see a stairway there. What you're not seeing yet are ramps along one side of that stairway, which we'll need. We're trying to continually look at ways to reduce that height of that platform off of Columbia Street so that the ramping is as minimal as possible, if any. But it does create challenges for us on the inside of the building and how we get from one level of the Phillips site on the 2nd floor and flow into the Columbia Street side. So we're continually required to look at that. And I think one of those diagrams we shared with you was the exploded view of those floor plates and how they're starting to connect with each other across the street. So that's something we're going to continue to respond to and develop as we move through schematic design and even, quite frankly, into design development. So we got another 1.5 years, maybe even 2 years before we fully resolve those issues.
Okay, thanks, Jim. The next, David, is the decision made that a bridge to the old Phillips School land is going to be the end result?
I would assume it is a feature that's going to be carried forward in option 3D4 and part of the approval of the schematic, preferred schematic that we're vetting tonight. I think it's more of a safety issue. They do not want kids crossing over Common Street at street level. That is a safety issue. So one of the ways to avoid that is to have an elevated walking pedestrian bridge to allow students quick and easy access across the campus to connect the two campuses. So I assume it's an integral part of the option 3D4 that we're considering tonight for approval.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, there was resounding support for the bridge from the community and from the building committee as we reviewed all of these options, particularly option 3D. So, okay, next, Lisa Feltner. I know residents are anxious about traffic patterns and volume and where to engage the engineer, but I wanted to share concern about Broadway / path parking flow, etc. There is a lot, even during pandemic, of cut through traffic with rushing vehicles between Mount Auburn, Russell, Common, partly to avoid Common Street lights. Also Robbins Road, Bellevue, Orchard, and Common Streets, ironically more so now with the Rotary. Noted, thank you.
Go ahead, Jim. I think also that we will be working with the Traffic Commission to try to make sure that we address that we don't have a lot of cut-throughs because of the Rotary that's been in place and so forth.
Correct.
We may do, you know, traffic calming measures that would deter people from going that way.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Next, Andy C. Regarding access to and from these buildings, how much thought has been given to bicycle and pedestrian access to the site, and how do we go from formalizing such a strategy? So we have received communication from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee, and we have told them that we intend to engage them as we get into schematic design and are designing that area in more detail.
Correct.
And we will make sure that the Bike Ped Committee is included in the discussions during the design, and that's still a little bit of a ways away.
Okay, oh, Heidi, I'm sorry. So we're through the Q&A and back to you, Heidi.
Thank you. This might have come up before, but I'm just wondering, the ground level parking, which right now has, you know, a 2 or 3 story building in that space. I'm just wondering if we could possibly cover over that parking, you know, have that parking there, have it covered over with a second story that's actually building, and make more use of the vertical space to free up some of the horizontal space for the field, the potentially increase the COA size of the building or whatever else, by taking some of what's in the rest of the building and moving it to a second floor over the parking lot and moving back the front of the building by reconfiguring. It just seems like there's an opportunity, you know, for vertical expansion and to free up some of the horizontal surface. Just a thought.
Yeah. Look at that.
I think I would just say, Heidi, that most of the ground level hardscape we have now for parking or circulation is really to facilitate deliveries and drop-offs and the Council on Aging. And that kind of area becomes much more challenging if it's got a building stacked on top of it. The floor to ceiling height has to be much larger. It wouldn't line up with other floors in the building. So we can certainly take a look at that, but that's one of the reasons we're not building over that particular area.
Thank you, Scott. I don't see any more hands up. Are there any attendees that have any more questions? Seeing none, what I'd like to do first is thank AI3 and their team for their updated designs. And I think you've done a great job of listening to the concerns of the community, listening to the concerns of the committee, and revise the designs, and we will continue to do that. But I think to this point, you've given us an opportunity to say, this is where we want to go. And I think that's exciting, number one, for the community, but it's also, it's been a lot of hard work between all parties involved, the building committee, the community, the team, the architectural team, the project management team, the superintendent and her staff. So again, I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for all of the efforts that have been put in to get us to this point. So what I'd like to do now is formally ask for a motion to move forward with proceeding with this selected option for the preferred schematic report.
So Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we proceed with option 3D4 for the preferred schematic report to the MSBA for submittal on December 29th, 2020.
Is there a second?
Second, Tracy.
Discussion? Seeing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Muted, John.
Gotta unmute yourself, John. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, I got it. Dee Dee Galston?
Yes, with great enthusiasm and appreciation.
Heidi Perkins?
Yes.
Lori Cable?
Yes.
Steve Magoon?
Yes.
Tom Tracy?
Yes.
Paul Anastasi?
Yes.
Kelly Curlbaum?
Yes.
There were two yeses there.
Yep.
Leo Patterson?
Yes.
Lindsay Mosca?
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli?
Yes.
Mark Sideris?
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's a unanimous, very well, very good decision by this committee. Thank you all. Christie, the next item on the agenda?
Jim, you want to pull back up, please, the presentation? Just keep, I think we still have slides. The next is communication to and from the community, which we've really been through. So there's no new communications from the community. We went through everything on Monday at the community forum that we've received to date. Hopefully we'll receive more through the website. And just to acknowledge that tomorrow when we meet with the COA, we do have an email from a community member that we will be going through the questions that were asked there. Okay. So next, just looking at announcements and general updates. So yesterday we did have our meeting with the Watertown Cable Access Executive Director and looked at their current spaces and just looking at the space that's allotted so far. So more to come on that, but similar to what we're doing tomorrow with the Council on Aging. So assessing current program space. We are looking to be on the school committee agenda for Monday, December 7th. I believe that's coming together. And then the submission of the preferred schematic report to the MSBA following this vote tonight. Thank you. So that would be December 29th. And then our next school building committee meeting will be January 6th, the first Wednesday of January. And then we'll be looking towards our meetings with the MSBA following our submission. So January 13th likely is our facilities assessment subcommittee meeting, and then the MSBA board meeting on February 11th. Okay. I believe that's all we have for the agenda for this evening.
Okay, we do have, we've gone through quite a number of things. I think that's it. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee at this point? I don't see any. Can I get a?
Lindsay just raised her hand.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I have a super quick question. Does this mean we get to stop calling it option 3D-4? Like
Yes.
we get to call it something else?
Be
It's just preferred option
It is the
now.
preferred option now.
Thank you
It won't
everyone
be-
for,
It won't get on the agenda if it says option 3D4.
no. I'm glad we get to move to calling it preferred. Thanks
Welcome
everybody.
to schematic design all.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Heidi Perkins,
Yes.
Lori Cable,
Yes.
Steve Magoon,
Yes.
Tom Tracy,
Yes.
Paul Anastasi,
Yes.
Kelly Curlbaum,
Yes.
Leo Patterson,
Yes.
Edie Galston,
Yes.
Lindsay Mosca,
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli,
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thanks again to everybody. Have a great night.